Hey guys, this is Pratik from Edureka. I welcome you all to this interesting session on SQL Basics. But before we get started, let's have a look at the agenda for today's session. So we're going to begin with understanding what is SQL. Followed by that, we'll be looking at what is data and database. Next up, I shall give a detailed explanation of a table. And finally, I'll end this session by discussing some SQL basic queries such as how to create a table, how to insert data into it, how to delete it, and many more. So I hope the agenda is clear. So without any further delay, let's get started. So the first topic I'll be discussing in today's session is Introduction to SQL. In today's world, data is everything, but to manage it, one has to master the art of data management. To play with the data and database, we need to know the language that is understood by these databases, and that language is SQL. SQL is the core of relational type databases. Because of its huge popularity, it is used by most companies today worldwide. After understanding the basic introduction, the first question that arises in our mind is, what is SQL? SQL is an abbreviation for Structured Query Language. It is a language used to perform actions such as update, retrieve, manipulate, and store data on a relational database. Now that we have learned what exactly SQL is, let's see some of its interesting facts. Do you know when SQL was born? Well, let me answer that question for you. SQL was developed at IBM by Donald D. Chamberlain and Raymond F. Boyce in the early 1970s. It was initially called as SQL, that is, Structured English Query Language. But later it was changed to SQL because SQL was a trademark of UK-based engineering company. SQL is said to be a powerful language. Reason for that is it uses very simple English sentences and also uses very few lines. It uses common words such as select, insert, update, and many more to perform its core functionalities. SQL is known to be a declarative language. When you write a query, you have to describe what needs to be done, and you don't have to worry regarding the flow of the query. It will be handled internally by the DBMS that you're using. Now, let's look at some of the features of SQL. So the first feature is SQL has well-defined standards. As it says, developers of SQL has clearly mentioned how exactly each and every query has to be written. There is no room for ambiguity when it comes to writing a query. The standards has to be followed. SQL is easy to learn. Yes, SQL is a language that is used to work with a database. Since SQL has a large user base as well as well-defined standards, for a beginner it is really easy to learn. Next one is, in SQL we can create multiple views. This is one of the unique and early feature that SQL came up with. View is nothing but creating a virtual table. A virtual table is a temporary table for certain use. By doing this, we can protect the integrity of the data. SQL has the ability to not only create a single view but can create multiple views. Finally, SQL queries are portable in nature. It means we can execute the SQL query in one system and execute the same query in another system without changing the format. But the condition is the environment setup of these two systems has to be same, else the SQL query won't be executed. So these were some of the features of SQL. Now let's look at the next topic, that is data and database. Firstly, let's look at what is data. So the standard definition for a data is values from different source which has been translated for some purpose. And this purpose can be anything. Source for the data can be like temperature reading, financial data, videos, blogs, text, etc. It goes on. In the end, it should make a meaningful sense. Only then we can consider it as a data. This image clearly depicts the different source of data. So we can clearly understand that the data source can be anything. Since we are clear about what data is all about, let's head to the next topic, that is, what is database? Firstly, let's look at the formal definition for a database. A database is an organized collection of data, where the data is stored and accessed electronically from a computer system. To make you understand what it means, let me use an analogy to explain the concept of database. Consider a library. Usually, the library contains a huge collection of books of different genre. Here, library is a database, and these books are the data. In the image, we can see a person performing an action on the data, and those actions can be like create, store, update, etc. When the user sends the instruction as well as the data, it will be stored inside the database after a certain process. And this entire process is bidirectional. That is, control flows on both the sides. Next, I'm going to talk about different types of databases. There are different kinds of databases that are in use today. And these databases are classified based on capabilities, features, functionality, size, and performance. So few of them are distributed database, object-oriented database, centralized database, operational database, graph database, cloud database, NoSQL database, and finally, relational database. Among these databases, the two popular types that are widely used are first one, relational database, and second one, NoSQL database. Relational databases generally uses SQL language, and we're going to learn more about it in the coming modules. Moving on, let's look at some of the popular databases that are widely used today. So they are MongoDB, Postgres, Microsoft Access, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle DB. These are the few popular databases that are used today. Each one of them has its own pros and cons. Since we have already started the topic of database, it wouldn't be fair to drop this topic abruptly. So I shall discuss a few basic database related queries. The first query is how to create a database. To explain this, let me jump into MySQL Workbench. This is the interface of MySQL Workbench. On the left side of the screen, we can see the database. In the center area, we are going to write our queries. At the bottom part, we are going to get the status of the query that has been executed. So you might wonder why I'm using MySQL Workbench for executing SQL queries. Well, SQL is a language that is used to communicate with the database, whereas MySQL Workbench is a database management system. So MySQL Workbench allows us to use SQL queries to communicate with the database. Can't we use other DBMS? Yes, we can, but the syntax of the queries may slightly vary. So let me explain you the first topic, that is how to create a database. And the syntax for this is create database are the keywords used to create a database. Followed by that, we have to specify the name of the database. Here, I'm using Edureka as a name for my DBMS. So let me select this entire statement and click on the lightning icon. So I can see at the bottom that the database with the name Edureka has been created. So let me refresh it. So we can see that the database with the name Edureka has been created. So the next topic I'll be discussing is how to delete a database. And the syntax for this is drop database are the keyword used to delete a database, and followed by that will be the database name. So let me select this entire query and click on the lightning icon. So we can see that the database with the name Edureka has been deleted. So these were the few queries related to database. The next topic that we're going to learn is table. So what is a table? A table in a database is nothing but a collection of data in a tabular way. It consists of rows and columns. The table contains data elements also known as values using a model of vertical columns and horizontal rows. The point of intersection of a row and a column is called a cell. A table can have any number of rows but should have a specified number of columns. To understand the concept of a table in a better way, let's look at the image. So the name of the table here is person. When we create a table, it has to have a name. A table without a name doesn't exist. So what is tuples? A single row of a table which contains a single record for that relation. Here there are 6 tuples. Next is attributes. Features of an entity is called attribute. An attribute has a name and a data type. Here there are 4 attributes. Those are ID, first name, last name, and date of birth. So I hope you have understood the concept of table. Let's now understand the table constraints. So what are table constraints? In simple words, it is a restriction that are specified by the user while creating a table. So you may wonder why these kinds of constraints are required. The answer for that is, even though a table stores the data, that data has to be of certain format. To ensure the data integrity, we use constraints. These constraints have to be decided during the creation of a table. If we want to change the constraint, then we have to delete the table and then we have to create a new table using the new constraints. Few of the constraints that are used most of the times while creating a table are check, default, primary key, foreign key, not null, index, and unique. Since we have understood what table is, let's look at some of SQL queries related to the table. The first one is how to create a table. To understand this, let's head to the MySQL Workbench. To create a table, we need an active database. Since we had deleted the previously created database, let me create the database once again. So we can see that we have a database with the name Edureka. So now let me create the table. And the syntax for creating a table is Create table is a keyword used to create a table. Followed by that, we have mentioned the table name. We need to make sure that the table name is unique. Keep in mind that in a database, there cannot be two tables with the same name. Inside the table, we have declared the columns along with the data type, and we have to end the query with a semicolon. So let me execute this query. So we can see that the table EMP has been created. So the next query I'm going to discuss is how to delete a table. And the syntax for this is, we shall use drop table keywords to delete a table. And followed by that, we have to specify the table name. So let me select this entire query. And we can see that the table with the name EMP has been deleted. With all the basic introduction understood so far, let's now understand some SQL basic queries. Let me begin this by introducing the most basic and widely used query, that is select statement. And the syntax is select column name from the table name. We can specify the name of the columns that are present in the table. Also, note that if you want to display all the columns of a table, then use star operator. Now, let's jump into execution part. To explain the entire SQL queries, I'm using student table. And this student table has student ID, first name, last name, address, city, and marks as its columns. So the syntax for select statement is select star from student. Since we have to display all the columns, I'm using star operator. So let me select this entire query. So we can see that the entire table has been displayed. So this is one of the way in which we can use select statement. The another method is, if we want to select a particular column, then we have to specify that column name. And the syntax for that is so we can see that from the table, we have selected only first name and last name. Usually, select statement is used to select the data from the database. So the next SQL query that I'm going to discuss is where clause. Where clause is used to filter records. Where clause is used to extract only those records that fulfill the specified condition. To demonstrate where clause, let me assume this scenario. If I want the name of the students who are from the city Goa, then my where clause query will be something like this. Select first name from student where city is equal to Goa. So let me select this query and execute it. So this is the output. Now let's look into and or not statements. If we need to add two or more conditions in the where clause, then we can use the above mentioned operators. These keywords will add more complexity to the query. So the first operator is AND operator. This operator displays a record if all the conditions separated by the AND operator are true. Let's look at the syntax. Select columns from table where condition 1 and condition 2 has to be true. To understand the example, let's dive into the demo part. I want to display the details of the student who has the first name as Bharat and last name as Singh. To achieve this, I'm using AND operator. So let me execute this query. Yes, I got the output for the student name Bharat Singh. The next operator I'm going to discuss is OR operator. OR operator usually displays a record if any of the conditions separated by OR is true. And the syntax for this is select columns from table where condition 1 or condition 2 is true. To understand the example, let's dive into the demo. I want to display the details of a student who has the first name as Bhuvi or the last name as Kumar. To achieve this, I'm using OR operator. Here, any one of the condition has to be true. So this is the query to execute a scenario. So we have got the output for the student with the name Bhuvi Kumar. So let's head to the next operator, that is NOT operator. So this operator displays a record if the condition or conditions are not true. So the syntax is select columns from table where the condition is not true. Let's see how this example works. Here, I want to display the details of the student who does not have the first name as Ashok. To achieve this, I'm using NOT operator. In this, we can see the details of all the students except Ashok. So the next query I'm going to discuss is insert into. If we want to insert any record or data into a table, then we can use insert query. And the syntax for this is insert into is a keyword that is used in insert query. Followed by that, we have to specify the table name and columns. After that, we have to specify the values. Let's look at the example to clearly understand how exactly this query works. So this is the example for insert query. So we are going to insert first name as Manoj, last name as Sharma, address as 07 MG Road, and city as Jaipur. Also, the marks is 438. So let me execute this query. So we can see that the data has been inserted. To check whether the data has been inserted or not, let me use select query. So we can clearly see that Manoj Sharma details has been added to the table. Next, I'll be discussing few aggregate functions. An aggregate function is a function where the values of multiple rows are grouped together as input on certain criteria and a single value is returned. We often use aggregate functions with the group by and having clauses of the select statement. So we will be discussing group by having in the later part of the session. Some of the aggregate functions are count, sum, average, minimum, and maximum. So let's discuss each one by one. So the first one is count. This function returns the number of rows that match specified criteria. So the syntax is count of column name from table where the condition. So now let's try this example in MySQL Workbench. Using this query, I will calculate the number of student ID that is present in the table. So let me select this query. In the output, we can see that the count of the student ID is 6. The next aggregate function is average. An average function returns the average value of a numeric column. So the syntax for this is select average of column from table where condition. Let's execute this example. Here, I'm trying to find the average marks scored by all the students. So let me select this query. So the average marks scored by all the students is 480.333. The next aggregate function is sum. Usually, sum function returns the total sum of that particular column. The syntax is select sum of column from table where condition. So let me execute this example. In this example, I'm trying to find the total marks scored by all the students. So let me select this query. The total marks scored by all the students is 2882. Moving on to the next aggregate function, that is minimum. Minimum function will return the smallest value of the selected column, and the syntax is select min of column from table where condition. So let me execute this example. If I want to know the student name who has scored minimum marks, I'll use this query. So let me select this query. Ashok Sinha has scored 385 marks, and this is the minimum marks in this entire table. And the last aggregate function that we are going to discuss is max. Max function returns the largest value from the selected column, and the syntax is select max of column from table where condition. Let's execute this example. So this is the example for maximum function. So let me execute this query. So we get the output, that is Bharat Singh has scored 580 marks. So 580 marks is a maximum marks in the entire table. Next SQL query is group by. Group by is the functionality used to arrange a similar type of data into a group. For instance, if the column in a table consists of similar data or values in different rows, then we can use group by function to group the data. The syntax is select column from table where condition group by the same column. Let me execute this example. I want to count the number of students who are from different cities. If there is any student from same city, then the count will be incremented. At the end, the output will have all the city name with the count of the students from that particular city. So let me execute this query. We got the count of students from different cities. Since all the students are from different city, we can see that the count is 1 in all the cases. If the data is large, we can clearly get to know how effective this query is. Next query is having. This clause is used to place condition where we need to decide which group will be part of the final result set. The having clause was added to SQL because the where keyword could not be used with aggregate functions such as sum, count, min, max, etc. So the syntax is select column from table where condition group by the column and having condition. So let me execute this example in my SQL workbench so that you'll get an idea about having clause. From the table, if I want to display the students who have scored more than 500, then I'll specify that condition after having keyword. So let me execute this query. So we can see that there are two students, Ashok and Bhuvi, who have scored more than 500 marks. Moving on to the next query, that is order by. Order by keyword is used to sort the result set in ascending or descending order. This keyword is used to sort the result set in ascending or descending order. The order by keyword shall sort the record in ascending order by default. If we want to sort the record in descending order, then we need to use the descending keyword. So let me explain the syntax. Select columns from table, order by columns, either by ascending or descending. Let me execute this example. In this example, we will get the count of students from different city, and we are arranging the city in descending order. So let me execute this query. We can see that the cities are arranged in descending order based on the starting alphabet. The next SQL query that we are going to learn is null values. In SQL, we use the null term to represent a missing value. A null value in a table is a value that appears to be blank. A field with a null value is a field with no value in SQL. Keep note that a null value doesn't mean that the value is equal to 0. To check the null value, we are not supposed to use the operators such as greater than, less than, equal to. These operators are not supported in SQL. We have special keywords. Those are is null and is not null. First, let's look at the is null operator. Is null operator is used to test the empty values. And the syntax for this is select columns from table where column is null. So let me execute this example. I want to display the student's name whose marks is null. So let me select this query and let me execute this. Since all the students have marks and none of them has null value, in the output we don't have any student names. The next query is not null. The is not null operator is used to test for non-empty values, and the syntax is select column from table where column is not null. So again, let me execute this example. I want to display the student names whose marks is not null. So let me execute this query. Since all the students have marks, all the student names are displayed. Let's move to the next query, that is update. Generally, the update command is used to modify rows in a table. The update command can be used to update a single field or multiple fields at the same time. Let's look at the syntax for update statement. Update, table, set column equal to value, where condition. Let's execute this example. Here, I want to change the name of the student with student ID 1. Previously, the student with student ID 1 was Ashok Sinha. Now I want to change his name to Amar Kumar. So let me execute this query. So we can see that the student name has been updated. To check the student table, let me execute this query. And we can see that the name of student ID 1 has been changed from Ashok Sinha to Amar Kumar. The next query we are going to discuss is delete. The SQL delete command is used to delete rows that are no longer required from the database tables. It deletes the whole row from the table. The syntax is delete from table where condition. So let me execute this example. If we want to delete a record from student table where the city is Mumbai, let me execute this query. So we can see that the query has been executed. To check the table, let me execute this statement. And student with the ID 1 has been deleted. Next, let's discuss in and between operators. In operator is used to specify multiple values inside the where clause. It acts as multiple OR. Let's look at the syntax. Select column from table where column in value. Let me execute this example. If we want to display the record of a student who are from certain city, then we can use in operator. In the given example, let's display the name of the students along with their IDs who are from Delhi, Goa, Pune and Bengaluru. Let me execute this query. In the output, only those students from the specified city name are displayed. The next operator is between. Between operator will select a particular value within the specified range. It is compulsory to add the beginning and the end value. Let us look at the syntax. Select column from table where column name between value 1 and value 2. Let's execute this example. If we want to display the record of students whose marks are in certain range, then we can use between operator. In the given example, let's display the name of the student along with their ID who has scored in the range of 400 and 500. So let me execute this query. In the output, only those student records who have scored in the range of 400 and 500 has been displayed. So the next topic we're going to cover is aliases in SQL. Alias is a process of giving a table or a column a temporary name so that it helps when the query is complex. It increases the readability of the query. This renaming is temporary and the table name does not change in the original database. We can alias a column or a table. So the first concept is column aliasing, and the syntax is select column name as alias name from table. So let me execute this example. In the student table, the column name student ID is a bit long. When we write a nested query, we might face some trouble. In order to tackle such situation, let alias that student ID column as ID. So let me execute this query. And we can see that the column student ID has been aliased to ID. Next is table aliasing. Now let's look at the syntax for table alias. And the syntax is select column from table as alias name. So let's execute this example. We generally use as keyword in aliasing. So let me execute this query. By using the technique of table aliasing, I have displayed the names of the students from the student table. So that was the basic concept of SQL. So that's all for today's session. I hope you found this session interesting and informative. Hope you have understood what is SQL, data, database, table, and some basic SQL queries. I hope you guys had a lot of fun while executing the queries. So that's all from my side today. Thank you and have a great day.